Hi, everyone. Welcome to Caffeinated Coaching. I am your host, Lori, and I am going to talk to Becky Croft today, also known as Coach Croft on Instagram. She is mainly a coach of middle life, perimenopausal, menopausal, and the whole masters athlete group. I'm excited to talk to her today as we're recording is the day before Thanksgiving, and she is an Indigenous runner as well. And so we're going to talk a little bit about that. Also, be sure to check out our other shows on the Everyday Athlete Podcast Network. Hi, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. So I think I did you some service there, I hope. You mainly coach, or are you focused on coaching masters athletes, perimenopausal, menopausal, and that group of people? Is that right?
Yes. So I have a roster full of athletes of all kinds of ages and abilities, but my primary focus is on masters and menopausal.
That is awesome. And you know what? That is great that we are recording today. We'll unpack that in a second, why I say that. That's great. But you all are also an Indigenous runner, an
Yes.
Indigenous woman. And I know that we're recording in November, the day before Thanksgiving. And so you probably have your own feelings about that. I try to be very respectful. Like, I'm from Washington State, which we tend to recognize that we are running on, native land. And we try to do that before races, and anything that we do kind of recognize that we know that this is not really our place. And so, like, tell the listeners maybe how you feel about that, if you're open to sharing.
Oh, absolutely. So I actually really appreciate that you understand you're from Washington and you understand that area because I'm dual tribe. I'm Cherokee and I'm also Yakima, and they are up there in that Washington State
Yes.
area. So, yeah, Thanksgiving is something that, as I have decolonized myself some, that I've really struggled with more and more over the years because it's more of a day of mourning for Indigenous peoples. And you'll hear them call it either Truthgiving or Thanks-taking, because we were taught in school that, the settlers came over here and they had a feast with the Indigenous peoples, and it was all, they were all besties. And there are some pieces of that there that are true in any story, obviously, but um, all of the history that we weren't taught after that happened is really something that Indigenous peoples try to speak to. And so it's really important for me to take some time and really reflect on our true history as a country and separate myself from that just a little bit. And it's always something that I've kind of struggled with to some degree, and I never understood why. And the more that I spend time digging into my Indigenous roots, the more I understand why it's a struggle.
I can understand that in this interesting political climate we find ourselves. So, because I was from Washington, I've actually talked to other people who were raised in different states, and we were taught a lot of Native history. Yeah, of course, we got the, let's churn butter in a glass jar, and we were all besties on Thanksgiving kind of talk. But we also learned a lot of, I think, like, more Native history of, like, the types of houses that Native people, like houses, I guess you should kind of quote unquote, and just kind of more about their lives before we. And so I talked to other people who were raised around the country, and they were like, what, you were taught about that? And I was like, well, a lot of the town names are actually Native, and they mean things, and we were taught even the meanings of, like, what the cities were named after and some of the history there. But I think it's important that we recognize, and now, like I mentioned, with the interesting political climate we find ourselves, I am native German, the large, like, I actually have a big, thick genealogical book of, like, I was raised by the migrants from my family here. And I feel a way about, like, the things that are happening right now, kind of that are paralleling some of Germany's not so great history. And so I know this show is not necessarily about all of the history. But I did just want to recognize that you do talk a lot about that on social media, and I appreciate that. And I think that we need more spaces for Indigenous runners, and we need to recognize that more and more. So I just wanted to kind of bring that up, especially.
I really appreciate that because I don't see myself in the running industry a whole lot. And there are organizations that I either have relationships with or I am a part of that are trying to change that dynamic.
I would love to be a part of that. And that's kind of what we do at Run Try Mag, is we are trying to represent all of the different groups that we don't necessarily see at start lines. Or for myself, I work in business, and so we don't necessarily see. We were talking about like running and endurance sports companies, entrepreneurs yesterday. We were talking about that, and there's only about like 8% that are Black, like I think 1% or 2% Hispanic. It's still primarily white owned businesses and entrepreneurships. And so that kind of makes me sad. And so I am doing my doctorate kind of on how we include more people into things. And so that gets me to kind of why it was also perfect that we did this discussion today, because you were one of my cheerleaders yesterday for posting something that I was kind of like, I don't really want to necessarily have this conversation with the world, but also I think it's important. And that was what do we feel like hitting mid 40s, being female or male? I think that, males go through their own set of, we have a whole separate podcast for male mental health. But when we as females, either like you had a hysterectomy early on, probably. I had one in my 30s. So, we're getting interesting comments on the side. Feel free to address them if you see any that make you want to address them. But yeah, so I had a hysterectomy in my 30s, which I don't typically talk about. And then I got kind of mid 40s, and a whole new string of things kind of went, oh, I don't know that I like it here. So can you talk about how you help like athletes and that kind of navigate that?
Yeah, again, it's another thing that we don't really talk about and we don't see a lot in the running industry. And I also was in my 30s when I had the hysterectomy. I had a long battle with endometriosis that led me to the decision of having the rest of my reproductive organs removed because I already lost about half of them along the way. And being a runner, like I gauge my fitness and my mental health and everything around running. And I didn't have a long history with running as a child or in school. I wasn't a collegiate athlete, anything like that. I came to it later in life. And I think that it came to me in a time when I really needed it because it saved my life through all that. But when I got to the point of getting ready for the hysterectomy, I planned it in between races and started looking into information for athletes who want to be able to perform in surgical menopause. And I wasn't able to find anything. So my hysterectomy was in 2016. This has been a little while ago. Stacy Sims wasn't on my radar, nor was anyone else. And so I had to just kind of figure it out. Everything that I Googled was like little old ladies with gray hair with a fan and they were grumpy. And oh, yeah, you can go out
Mine
and
was
jog.
in 2016 too, just so, I had no idea about that. So I think I'm going to go with weird term is Hister Sister. I've always been kind of like,
Yes.
that's a new one, but sorry, I did not mean to interrupt, but 2016,
No, but that's exactly what it led me to was the website Hister Sisters, and there was no talk about athletes or performance in running on that website. And so I felt really alone and I wasn't speaking about my journey at that point. It felt very vulnerable, very uncomfortable. Most of my friends and family didn't even know what I was going through or why I was having surgeries. And so I finally, once I got through the process of the hysterectomy and recovered from that, started searching even more for resources so that I could perform. And I couldn't find them. So I kind of just resolved to the idea that I was going to have to become that resource for other women because if I needed it, someone else did too.
That is so true because I did the exact same thing and I planned mine kind of between races too. Like I knew I needed one. I had a different kind of way I came to it, but I knew I was in a lot of pain and I did not want to get pulled from I was on a training run and I did not want to get pulled from this half marathon that I was pretty sure I was going to PR. And so I ignored going to the doctor or the hospital, despite the fact I was like falling down in the street, like
Oh
crippled
my
over
God.
in pain, and doubled over, crippled over. Yeah, it felt really crippling at the moment. But I was like, I'm not going to the doctor because they're going to tell me I needed emergency surgery or something horrible, and that I can't go run this race. And so I avoided it until I came back from the race, and then finally went to the doctor, and they were like, "You're bleeding internally. Did you
Oh my
not
God.
realize?" And I was like, oh, well, that's unfortunate. Can we do something about it now? So, yeah, I had surgery to fix that. It actually, mine turned out kind of worse than they planned and worse than a lot of other people's because they found when they went to do it, laparoscopically, that it was too complicated. I had too much scar tissue and stuff going on. And so they had to revert to an open, full abdominal hysterectomy.
Oh
So
my
it
God.
was even more like, I don't know if you want to say traumatizing. It was more recovery, that's for sure. But there was no one out there talking about it. And ironically, I didn't really mention that in the post I made yesterday, but that's exactly when I started that Instagram account because no one in my family really understood, and I wanted like a new place away from like my friends and family that I had to navigate this new life, I guess, like with running and everything. So that's how I ended up with the Instagram that I have now. There were no resources. So I'm so glad you have become a resource for women going through that. And just perimenopause, probably non surgically too. I'm sure you're working with people or just
Oh, for
naturally
sure.
coming into it.
And what I explain to them whenever we talk is that I absolutely understand a good portion of what they're going through. I mean, we've not had the same experiences or the same symptoms, or we haven't arrived there the same way, but I've likely already been through a lot of the things that they've already been through. I joke and say that I was prematurely old. So I have all the old lady issues, but I've learned how to navigate them, or I have tools and resources and connections that can help them with them. And they don't have to suffer quite as much as like we did.
Yeah. I don't think I stumbled on Stacey Sims until like 2019 and her, We're Not Just Small Men. And her books are good resources and her information, but it's also, yeah, you can't anticipate all the things that you are going through and will go through. So can you tell us like maybe one or two things that is different if you were coaching a younger athlete or someone not going through it versus a master's athlete in that situation?
Yeah, so I tell them that old ways won't open new doors, and all of the things for the people who have been athletes from a young age, they can't get away with skipping strength or mobility anymore, or they can't just ignore those niggles for quite as long because they're going to become injuries. And to get out of that cycle of injury, you're going to have to change the way that you approach sport. And things that are more important now are nutrition, hydration, sleep, and those things can be really hard to navigate in, those master's ages or the menopausal stage, because our body with the drop of hormones changes the way that it handles all of those things.
I find rest is much more necessary than it ever used to be. And is that because of the 3 a.m. wake ups? I swear that all middle. I was told by an OBGYN that that is part of it, the 3 a.m. wake ups. And I was like, man, I wish I had known that like a year or two ago. And so now, like
Exactly.
rest in general, like some days you just don't feel as motivated. I think it's harder to get as motivated. Do you find that?
It really is. Loss of mojo is one of those things that's really hard to navigate. And it's something that I really struggled with at one point. Um, and I was already in the place where I was getting hormone replacement therapy, but we were still really trying to find that happy balance for me. And even though I'm a marathoner, I couldn't force myself to get out the door and go for like a 3-mile easy run, or, I used all of my tips and tricks to try to get out the door and they weren't working. So I went to the endocrinologist after I had heard some menopause podcasts and things, and we looked at my hormone levels, and come to find out my E2, which is one of the estrogens, was almost undetectable. It was really low. So that was the problem. It wasn't me, it wasn't my motivation, anything that I could overcome easily on my own. It was something that I needed a little bit of extra help with. And once we adjusted my hormone levels, I was just like, okay, I'm going to go do my run now. It's no big deal. So there's a little bit of a hybrid approach that you need to take with things. Sometimes maybe it is outside of your control.
I think that's probably true. Especially the hormones just are outside of your control. And so I'm going to unpack this right now. I don't think there's anything wrong with using HRT. There are people who are like hormone replacement. You should eat right and exercise. Oh, okay, that's great. That's been a part of my life for a long time, but this is a different situation. That nothing's changing no matter how much I want to go exercise or I'm eating right. Like things just aren't exactly the same. So I think that it's one of those things that is taboo, hormone replacement, and people don't want to, like, they either want to be judgy about it or they don't want to say that they do it. And I don't think there's anything wrong with it. If it helps you, I think it's worth doing.
I walked away from my post-op visits after my hysterectomy and was given absolutely zero information about hormone replacement, how to proceed, what to expect. And I had already had a really terrible experience with a doctor gaslighting me and literally laughing in my face and telling me that he couldn't put a uterus back in if he took it out. So he had already terrified me about what could happen if there was any endometriosis left in my body and I went on to hormones. Come to find out, there have been some really well-funded, terrible studies that people have clung onto the results from because they spent so much money on them, but they're inaccurate. We are finally getting to that point where we're unpacking that some, but we really do have a lot of damage from that. And women saying, oh, well, I don't want to go on replacement because of breast cancer. If hormones truly did fuel breast cancer in the way that they understand it, then all women would be dead. So they have to spend some more time and really unpack that research, understand who funded it, why they funded it, why they're holding on to the research, and learn more about hormone replacement from really great endocrinologists or doctors who spend every day with this. But I don't think that you're going to supplement your way out of menopause very easily. I think that there's no problem with taking hormones, especially for me, because I have no ovaries left. I have to have it. And I went a year and a half without anything, and I felt like absolute garbage. And I knew that I couldn't continue to live the rest of my life like that.
Yeah. That was kind of like I'm big on science. I've read all the studies and things and I was like, it doesn't cause breast cancer. It doesn't. I mean, if if you have the genes for breast and ovarian cancer, that's a different issue. So, if you have a low risk of it in general, my understanding, I'm not a doctor or medical provider, but from reading the science, I am trained to read the science. And from that, I came to the conclusion that it's not going to be much of a risk with like breast cancer and stuff.
Well, and the doctors who are speaking to this actually do explain that there can be a little bit of a higher risk if you're taking like the patch or oral estrogen, but if you're taking it like transvaginally, then no, there is no extra risk. And so for me, I actually carry the blood marker for deep vein thrombosis, which is a blood clotting disorder. My mom has it, and that's where I got the marker from. That was a risk that I was worried about. But again, the way that I take estrogen and testosterone, it doesn't raise my risks.
I think that is great that you are a proponent for it, that you're coaching athletes that do it. Is there any kind of like mantra or any thought process that you work with athletes on if they're going through any hard situation. We don't have to stick to this topic particularly, but just any hard situation. Do you have a mantra or some sort of mindset that you help with?
Yeah, I meet them where they are, first of all, and I coach them through grace. So if they come to me and they tell me that they don't want to explore HRT, or if they don't want to explore supplementation in any other way, if they are vegan, if they're vegetarian, whatever, I respect that. I don't necessarily hold the same beliefs, but I don't have to be able to coach them in the best way possible. But my go-to is probably progress over perfection with everything. So if they are having a day where, they haven't slept well and they're not feeling great and they just can't force themselves through a run, that's fine. One missed run is not going to make or break anything. So explain to me what's going on. I'm so sorry. I'll sympathize with you and empathize with you and give you whatever tools and resources you may need. And then we'll figure it out together. Either it was an off day, or if it continues to be an issue, then we adjust things.
That is a great mindset to go with. I've been running for a long time, most of my life. I obviously have taken breaks here and there, college, a little after probably even, but it, perfect is the enemy of good is a big thing, and kind of progress over perfection, same thing. One run is not going to, cause the whole progression to stop. There's also the whole cutting it 5 or 10 minutes short
Yeah.
is not going to be the end of the world when it comes to training. So is there a distance that you like to coach best?
It's funny because whenever I first started thinking about coaching and getting into it, I am I would say that my favorite distance is the half marathon, but I am a marathoner. I don't necessarily want to go super long, but I have attracted a lot of trail athletes and ultra runners, and they bring me so much joy. But I mean, so do my athletes who run 5Ks and they want to run them fast, or they want to feel strong, or I think that running is so much more than races and paces and distances. For me, being Indigenous, it is connection to land, it is connection to community, to myself, and it's a moving meditation for me most times. So whatever it is for someone, if it's mental health, if it's just their happy place or their time away from all of the chaos of the world, then I'm happy to help them have as many happy miles as they want to have.
That's awesome. For a long time, my favorite distance was the half marathon. And then I think kind of after the hysterectomy, I don't think that I've really raced a half since then, but I got into the longer distances more so. And I find that kind of works better for me personally. I find that I get like joint issues. I mean, I have a disorder for joints, but also I find that it felt like it got worse with like no hormone kind of thing, less hormones, no hormones. And so I find that going slower for longer fits me better. So I find it interesting that you get great joy from the, longer like trail athletes and things, because for myself, there's a different mindset between when I was trained like racing halves and lower distances, shorter distances, and then how I feel on a trail. So is that a different, do you see in athletes, do you see a different kind of mindset between the trail and shorter
I
distances?
Yeah, I think in general that there is a stereotype that if you're a trail runner or like a super long distance runner, that like you're out there partying. And if you're road racing, then you're all about performance. And I think that both can be true in each case. I actually went to Colorado in September and did a 30K at elevation with a group of BIPOC athletes. I was there at a camp being to speak on like running form and coaching and just general information. And we really did have the best time. I mean, I might have spent the last 6 miles cussing because I couldn't get off the mountain, but I tried to drop. It was 2 weeks before Chicago, and they wouldn't let me. So I was like, I guess I'm just going to walk this last 6 miles out. But they were
That's how
so
we
much
do it.
fun.
We
Yeah.
just walk that last part.
Well, there was really a lot of bouldering because there were some lies told on the website about how buttery smooth the trails were.
That tends to be a thing.
Yeah, and that's what I tell
Or
my athletes all the time when they go out for a trail race. I'm like, "Well, I know this distance is a lie, so we're gonna really prepare you for this."
I do that, like, this distance is a lie, and I
Mhm.
also do quite honestly, like, the trail is probably a lie, like, maybe 75% of it is buttery smooth, and then, yes, you're climbing over rough rocks and stuff, but my favorite is, like, the distance is a lie. So you signed up for a 30K, sorry you're going 35K, and it's not one of those, my
Yeah,
GPS measured it differently because of the tangents. It's just literally when
so
you do trail races, they're measured a little bit shorter or a little bit longer than they actually tend to be, just the distance of the trail. Because you can't say it's like, it's 28.5K. It's not, it's just easier to say it's 30K, or you can't say it's 32.7K. You're just going to say 30K. So
or if
I have
you
a
get lost and miss some markers, then yeah, you've gone longer than you intended to.
I am always I have funny stories about trail races. One, in regarding the lost and the markers. I was not lost. However, I had run this race one other time, and it was at least it was a year prior. And at the time, I never found myself alone on the trail. Well, the second year, it felt like there were less people. But anyway, I found myself alone, like with a pack behind me, but the
Mhm.
pack in front of us had definitely gone way on to where you couldn't see or hear them anymore. But I got to this one point and I was like, I can't remember. I think we go up this way, but I can't remember. There's a trail over here. And one of the people behind me just kind of like, we kind of stopped. And I was like, do you know if we go this way or this way? And she was like, I was following you.
No.
I'm going to be the first person to tell everyone, do not follow me in a trail race. I did a 1 mile loop for 12 hours. And I would like to say that it was at, hour 11 when I went off trail. But I'm sorry to say it was like in the very beginning when I was fresh and I was on like lap 3 or something. And there was like, I just was like minding my own business, having a nice run. And all of a sudden I'm in a field off the trail,
Oh,
and
no.
this was like a one. So like I'd be the first person to tell you, do not follow me in a trail race. I
Same.
have had people use me as a rabbit in the dark, and I can see the line of headlamps behind me, and I'm like, God bless those people for following me.
I did that in my first trail run, actually, which was here in Tulsa. And I was following a girl. And we did probably, it was as many loops as you want to do. It was like a charity race. And so I did 2 loops and I was like, we were so lost. We were nowhere near anybody else. And I was like, yeah, no, 2's good for me. I'm done.
I have to give you props for the elevation race, because I tried to race in Ouray, Colorado, which is not the highest of high. For everyone listening, it's not the highest of high points in Colorado, but it is an elevation. And I had had surgery not long before that, and I was trying to do a backyard ultra, and I had never done a backyard ultra before. And let me tell you how much I do not like that type of race, that format. But
Yeah.
I was also like, I was looking at everyone that was there that like was from the area, and I was like, why is there no air here? Like I don't like this. Why is there no air? So I am proud to say I took DFL. I just dropped after the first loop. I was like, I don't care that I'm the first person to drop. I never want to run another backyard ultra ever. I find it to be have you ever run one?
No, and I have no interest.
Yeah, I it's like putting stress on stress for no reason, because you're like, yeah, all I need to do is like these 15-minute miles, like that's fine. And but then you start overthinking it, and I have a habit of overthinking anyway, but you start overthinking it to the point where you're like, okay, well, if I get in at 12 minutes, then I have this much time, and it's a 4.2-ish mile loop
Oh,
on the
runner's math
official.
gets real sketch then.
Yeah, runner's math gets real sketch when you have no air too.
Yeah.
And so then I'm like, I need this much time to refill my water, and I'm like, why am I stressing myself out about running a 4 mile loop over and over again? I'm like, this is not for me.
No.
And so I dropped at that, and I have a picture of the medal. I don't know if I still have the medal anymore. It says, everybody's a DNF who's not first place. Well, on
Oh, yeah.
top of that, I really wanted them to write DFL on mine because I was so proud of being the first person to drop out. I went to the coffee shop while all of
Oh,
my
yeah.
friends well, all of my friends continued to run. I was like, I will crew you all day long. And as a matter of fact, I'm making a coffee run. So if you'd like to put in an order, I'm happy to carry all of these. So I did. I walked up to the coffee shop and got back by the time they had run another loop.
That
And
is awesome.
I had the best day. I ate pizza and filled their water all day long. And so to all the listeners, I'm happy to crew you in a backyard ultra. I will not run one with you again.
Right. I would be happy to crew as well.
It's fun because you see them often, but yes, Jason, who's in the background producing, he loves backyard ultras. It's like his favorite thing to want to conquer. And so he's happy to be the runner if we would like to ever crew him.
Yeah, we would be perfectly happy with that.
Yeah, we would have a great day of just drinking coffee and eating pizza and filling water bottles.
Yes, I would be there for the coffee for sure.
I do have a picture of him. He likes to send people on runs for like really odd things while he's running these, as a matter
Oh
of
my
fact.
gosh.
That was part of the coffee run. He wanted coffee as well. So I brought him coffee. But the last backyard ultra he did, I was running a 50K at the time. And he talked somebody, I don't even know who it was, into going and getting him an Impossible Whopper and
Oh
bringing
my
it back.
gosh.
So there's a picture of him eating an Impossible Whopper, and across the years, between loops, he's saying it was so good in the background. And he talks people into going and getting him Impossible Whoppers and coffee, and I guess you just can't say no to his funny laugh and stuff.
I
But
could see him doing that too.
yeah, so just to anyone warning, if you are crewing him at any race, you're going to get a request for some weird food or coffee or something between loops. Yeah, so props to you for running 30K at elevation. I felt like there was no air there. And I grew up at 3,000-ish feet. So
Yes,
actually, I think
Tulsa.
so it wasn't like low elevation, but it's not Colorado elevation either. So
Tulsa, we're like 700 feet, maybe 780 something.
really,
So the 30K at Westline was we started at like 8,000 or so and climbed up to over 10. At mile 2, I was like, do I just lay down and die here? Do I go back? Like, what do I do? It can't be the whole race. And I did get into a groove where it was more comfortable, but I wasn't hydrating enough. And I was like, yeah, no, this is not
that
what I
was
was
the
ready.
other thing I did not know about elevation was that you
Mhm.
dehydrate so much faster. And
Yeah.
I was just like, what is going on in this place? Like, so I am a crew member for anyone in Colorado. I am not a Colorado runner, at
Yeah.
least
I learned
maybe I
very
might
valuable
try.
lessons from that.
Yeah, I think I learned my lessons. We do have a question over here of what your Instagram is, which is coach.croft.
Yes.
So at coach.croft, if that's a legitimate question. We do get a lot of random. This time, we're looking for a rich white woman instead of 2 days ago when I did the call
Oh
with
my god.
Adria. uh,
Well,
we
good
were
luck with
told,
that.
we were told we were broke. That was we get some interesting comments, but I thought I'd address that. Her Instagram is at coach.croft. Both C's, Coach and Croft.
Yes.
I do love your Instagram handle. It's so easy, or handle or name or whatever we're calling them.
It's so
So
funny because, like, people that I have created relationships with online, when they meet me, they still call me Coach Croft. They're like, "It feels weird to call you Becky." I just know you as Coach Croft.
and I'm
I'm like,
always like, is it Rebecca? Is it Becky?
yeah, I go
And
by
whenever
Becky.
and whenever I hear Becky, I do want to say Becky with the good hair, but I don't think that
I
has
do
the
I have a lot
she
of
has
it.
amazing hair, everyone. Like I'm very envious of the beautiful hair.
That's the native genes for sure.
Yes, and I do not have that long. As a matter of fact, I got it cut the other day. It was longer, but I would like roll over on it and stuff, which is
I
I
do.
don't
I
know.
fight with it at night. No matter if it's up in like a ponytail or if it's down, I wake up 15 times a night probably to flip over and I have like
Moving
braid on
it,
my hair.
right?
Yes.
Yeah, 'cause I had even longer hair when I was younger, but it was just like moving it is such a do you sleep with it braided?
No, I run with it braided. And maybe, I don't know, putting like a high pony with a braid would be more helpful. I don't know. It's just a lot to manage.
That's how I had to do triathlons when I had longer hair, was like a ponytail braid, because
Mhm.
then you could kind of bun it up for the swim cap. And
Yeah.
then it was like, it would still keep it kind of like slicked back. Cause I don't know. I saw a woman running it was a 12K. It's a pretty, it's like a 30,000 person 12K, but she was running it with like hair, not quite as long as yours, but long hair and thick like yours, down. She was running with it down. And I was
No.
like, how? Why? I
I
don't
forgot one of my
support
hair
this.
ties the other day, and I just had the low pony, and so it was a rat's nest because it wasn't braided, and that was after just like a 4-mile run.
Yeah, that was me last Saturday. I was at the beach and it was windy and humid. And I, when I was done with like a 4 mile run, it was just like this like knotted mess of humidity and stuff, because I also have curly hair. I know it doesn't look like it, but I have curly hair. And so it turns into quite the mess. It's a wonderful thing.
Yeah, that's I usually just scrunch mine up. It's like wavy or crazy, or it's braided, or it's in a ponytail. It's not often I take the time to dry it because it takes about 15 minutes.
I imagine it must take a while to dry that much hair, but it is beautiful hair.
Thank you.
And I'm sure all of us are like, "Man, I want her hair. It's unfair." So you are Becky with the good hair.
Yes. Yeah. One of my baristas at Starbucks used to call me that. And I was like, no, 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 I'm not home wrecking
That's
anybody's home.
exactly why I did not wanna say it to you, because I'm not trying to imply she's a homewrecker by any means. I was like, "That has kind of negative connotations a little
It
bit."
does.
Maybe you don't wanna be Becky with the good hair.
No.
So is there anything else that you would like tell people to try, or like anything that you've done that you definitely, because we just had a whole conversation about like races at elevation and how crazy they are, but like what's your favorite thing that you think maybe like in running that you think everybody should try once?
I think everyone should periodize their training. And that's what I'm doing right now. So I came off of 3 marathons this year. I had a goal race in February in Ventura, had a hard day. It did not turn out the way that I wanted it. And I was in the middle of the deload before I was offered an opportunity to go to Boston to represent Native Women Run. And so that one was impromptu, but it was 6 weeks after. And then I took a little bit of a deload and then went into Chicago. So I normally would be burned out after 2 marathons a year, but this year I somehow came out of it like, okay, what's my next marathon? And I was like, no, 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 stop. Chill out. And so I'm in like 5K, 10K work right now for a little while so that I can build some more speed. I took a run day out. I added another strength day. So I'm actually lifting 4 days a week now instead of just two. And I think that there's a lot to be said for that because everybody just wants to go like further and further and further and further, or they want to chase marathon after marathon and they don't understand why they're not seeing progress or why they're always injured. So, periodizing your training cycles in the same way that you periodize like your training weeks, like pulling back and doing 5K, 10K work, or even a half marathon if you're a marathoner. And this is what I told everybody at the camp. I was like, listen, you guys are running like 100 milers. So even a marathon for you is pulling back. Pull
Yeah.
back to a half or, something. You don't have to do the 5K. But after you've got a big goal race, take at least 2 weeks off and then go into some shorter distance work on speed, work on strength, work on those weaknesses that you're trying to ignore the rest of the time.
I have a goal of 4 days a week of strength training when I'm running at long distances as well. So far, I get to about two or three, but four is but so here's an interesting before I, let you run off. So you are an RRCA certified coach, correct? Well,
Yes.
I am a USCA certified ultra running coach. And just so everybody knows, the periodization actually in ultra running versus like marathon and shorter distances is actually reversed. like the way that you mix. So if you are listening and you're somebody who wants to go longer distances, work with someone who knows. It doesn't have to necessarily be someone certified in ultra running, but someone who knows. And if you're someone who wants to go like marathon and shorter, work with someone who knows that periodization or knows both of them, so that you're getting the right mix of the deload and the speed training when you should versus the distance when you should, because they are, the advice, you know, of certified coaches is that they're kind of reversed of each other. I found that interesting when I learned the long distance training. As much as, I mean, I'd already run quite a few ultras, but when I actually took I was like, that makes sense. It makes more sense to do it that way.
I have fights with people sometimes on threads about like why ultra athletes still need speed or why they still need strength. And I'm like, hey, they don't get to just like run low and slow forever. And the low and slow is actually low mileage. It's not like low effort. So,
Yeah,
I mean, they need it, but like you need that mix of different things in your training regardless. But yeah, there's a lot
where
of
they
different ways,
go.
yeah, where they go and a lot of different ways to mix it up.
Yeah, but you're absolutely correct. You need all of it, but it's just where you put it in the training cycle. And so that's really important. All right, our last question that gets asked on all of these: are you a caffeine drinker? And
Yeah.
what is your caffeinated drink of choice?
I am, because I don't have kids, I can afford to go to Starbucks every day. I am a skinny vanilla latte girl, but no foam because I don't want a half a cup of foam.
Yeah, so I am also a skinny vanilla latte, and I do not have children, so I can go to Starbucks every day. Sometimes, unfortunately, when I'm teaching until 9 o'clock at night, sometimes it's twice a day,
Yeah.
and I try to do the first cups at home and then maybe Starbucks in the afternoon on those days. But I do the same drink. Although lately I have been getting their sugar cookie with vanilla foam, and
Oh, yeah.
they put like this much foam on it. But I've been joking lately because I'll take the top off and like scrape out the foam. I'm like, I really just order this for the foam. So essentially, I'm drinking a puppuccino.
Oh, nice.
I'm like,
Yeah.
I just ordered your dog's drink.
I do like the peppermint mochas. I'm not usually like a holiday drink girl. And when Jason was talking about like the holiday drinks and gingerbread and all of that, I was like, no, 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 no. But the
Of
peppermint
course.
mocha, that's a different story.
That's his. He's not much of a holiday drinker either. Once in a while he'll order one, but and I just like to say that I corrupted him. He was like this black coffee, thinks he's better than everybody. No, just kidding. That's my own opinion of people a lot of times who drink black coffee. They think that pinkies up is what he said. Pinkies up. But I corrupted him got him drinking like stuff that wasn't mostly black every single day of his life. So occasionally he will switch it up with a holiday drink, and I will out him. His holiday drink of choice is also the peppermint mocha. So
Well, that's good to know.
you can actually, when he's like, no, black coffee, you can
I'll
be
be
like,
like,
I
wait a
know.
minute, tell the
Yeah,
truth.
I know what you do when no one's looking. Well, it's been so much fun to talk to you, and I appreciate all of the training tips and information that you have shared with us. So, anybody listening, if you are looking for a coach that works with masters athletes, Becky with the good hair that does not home wreck is is an awesome resource for that. So you can find her on Instagram at coach.croft with the C, both coach and Croft. Let's point that out. Thank you again for sharing this 45 minutes with me.
Well, thank you for taking the time to chat with me.
We will do it again sometime for
For
sure.
sure. Yeah.